Dr. Dalia Fahmy is the Director of International Relations and an Associate Professor of Political Science at Long Island University. She joins us now from Princeton, New Jersey. Good to have you back with us, Doctor. What does the continued closure of the Rafah crossing signal about the current state of the ceasefire and the level of trust between Israel and Hamas?
So we know that the ceasefire has been violated already several times. 37 Palestinians have been killed in either air raids or gunfire. 123 have been injured. So the ceasefire has been violated already several times. In terms of its fragility, for example, we know that the U.S. State Department issued a statement on Saturday that they expect Hamas to be violating the ceasefire. And so, as we discussed last week, this technically was not a peace agreement. Nothing was signed. It was an agreement to work together. And so the structure of the past week has indicated that the level of ambiguity begs itself about whether the question is this really a ceasefire, and where does it take us? For example, we know that for every Israeli body that is being returned, 15 bodies were returned, Palestinian bodies. And we saw the images today and yesterday of the conditions of these hostages that we're taking. And so, again, these questions beg a deeper understanding of what is going on, what is the reality, what is it that we should be asking and looking for, because the notions of a ceasefire have already been violated, and it begs the question of what are the next couple of days going to hold. The Rafah border crossing has been closed since May, and this is a critical juncture for the entry point of aid into the Gaza Strip. And so for example, the Egyptian government announced this morning that the Rafah border will be opening on Monday, and very quickly, within a half an hour, Prime Minister Netanyahu saying, no, the border will be closed. Again, it begs the question of what really happened last week and what does the future hold.
Some observers suggest that Israel may be using the dispute over the return of bodies as a pretext to justify breaking the truce and resuming the war. How credible is that assessment in your view, and what might Israel stand to gain from that narrative?
So we know that much of the Knesset, and especially members of the right-wing government, are quite unhappy with the ceasefire because it's the perception that Israel did not achieve its objectives. Hamas is still existing. The extent of the territory that members of the right-wing government, for example, wanted, were not taken. And so there is a level of pressure internally to resume the war. But also the pressure of the hostage release has in certain ways been removed. Now, I think we need to also ask the question on the other end. What does Hamas have to gain by continuing to hold these bodies? We know that, for example, once all of them are to be released, then you start to analyze what does Israel really want from this territory, from Gaza. And so it's not clear that there is real leverage for Hamas to hold on to these bodies. I think what we need to ask ourselves is, what does the Palestinian people want? Who are those who are entering these bargains, and who are they making them on the behalf of? The fact that 12 of the 28 bodies have already been released, and the argument is that heavy equipment is needed for the extraction of the rest, that could be true, but also heavy equipment is needed for the extraction of a lot of the bodies that are under the rubble in Gaza. And so, again, this ceasefire agreement has to ask, those who signed it have to ask themselves, what was aimed to be gained from this moment? And if the fragility of it is going to lead to a continuation of violence and atrocities, then what was last week really all about?
Well, given the US mediation and President Trump's personal involvement in brokering this ceasefire, how much leverage does Washington realistically have to keep both parties committed to the truce?
We know that President Trump, by placing his hand, for example, on the scale, pushed the prime minister into the ceasefire last week. And so the Trump administration does have a heavy hand in this. It's not clear if the Trump administration's policy is for a long-term peace and stability in the region, or signing an agreement for the sake of signing an agreement. Again, what was signed last week in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, was one paragraph with 4 world leaders that did not include Israel. And so, again, this was not necessarily a peace agreement. It was an agreement of these 4 countries to work together without Israel actually signing anything. And so it's not a peace deal. We're not talking about the Camp David Accords here. There isn't a clear line of what the next couple of months or years are going to look like. But what we do know is that there is an immediate need in Gaza today. According to the United Nations, the food insecurity is at an all-time high. We have, for example, 28,000 documented cases of starvation or acute malnutrition. In terms of water, 96% of the population in Gaza has acute water shortages or water that is not clean. In terms of healthcare, we know that the United Nations has been reporting that the common diseases are rampant on the Gaza Strip. And finally, shelter. We know that 98% of shelter structures have been destroyed or are uninhabitable. And so in terms of what is going to take to actually talk about a peace agreement, it's those four verticals that needs to be addressed. And the fact that we are not addressing those issues, we're talking about issues that, yes, need to be settled, but are not acutely critical to the long-term and short-term survivability of the people of Gaza, begs the question of what was this peace agreement really all about?
Okay, Dr. Dalia Fahmy, we'll have to leave it there. Great to get your thoughts as always. Thank you.
Thank you.